In the heart of suburbia, where the lawns are meticulously manicured and the streets are lined with children's laughter, a dark secret lay hidden beneath the surface. This is a tale of passion, betrayal, and tragedy that ended in murder. The quiet neighborhood, where residents often waved at one another and children played freely, was a place where trust reigned. It was in this seemingly perfect community that Sarah lived, a devoted mother and wife known for her warm demeanor and community spirit. To her neighbors, she was the ideal housewife, always friendly and quick to lend a helping hand. But beneath this facade, Sarah was grappling with a profound sense of unfulfillment in her life, feeling trapped in a routine that had long lost its sparkle. Her husband, Mark, was a hard-working man, dedicated to his job and family, often coming home late after long hours at the office. This left Sarah feeling isolated and yearning for something more. It was during this vulnerable time that she met Jason, the neighbor's son. Jason was young, charming, and full of life, a stark contrast to Sarah's mundane reality. Their friendship quickly blossomed, and what began as innocent conversations over the fence soon turned into stolen glances and secret rendezvous. Sarah found herself drawn to Jason's adventurous spirit, feeling alive in a way she hadn't in years. Their connection deepened, and it wasn't long before their friendship ignited into a passionate affair, filled with moments of exhilaration and secrecy. In the shadows of their suburban lives, they crafted a world where they could escape the constraints of their reality. They shared whispered confessions and dreams of a life unburdened by responsibilities. However, as their relationship intensified, so did the risks they took. Every secret rendezvous came with the fear of being discovered. The thrill of their illicit encounters was exhilarating, but the weight of their deception hung heavy in the air. Sarah often lay awake at night, wrestling with guilt and fear, torn between her responsibilities as a wife and mother and the desire for the excitement Jason brought into her life. Jason, too, felt the strain of their hidden romance, longing for a future together while knowing the odds were stacked against them. Their affair was a high-stakes game, and both knew the potential for disaster was looming. Meanwhile, Mark remained blissfully unaware, immersed in his work, trusting his wife implicitly. Friends and family saw the love and dedication he poured into his marriage, never suspecting the turmoil brewing just beneath the surface. The more time Sarah spent with Jason, the more she found herself disconnected from her family. The guilt became a constant companion, yet the thrill of the affair overshadowed her better judgment. She often found herself glancing out the window, anxious at the sight of Mark pulling into the driveway. As days turned into weeks, the lines between right and wrong began to blur. One fateful night, as Sarah sat alone in her living room, the weight of her choices became unbearable. The house was quiet, the children asleep, and in that silence, she felt the enormity of her actions pressing down on her. The phone rang, breaking the stillness. It was Jason. His voice crackled with urgency, filled with a mix of excitement and desperation. They made plans to meet at their usual spot, a secluded area behind a nearby park, a place where they could escape the prying eyes of the neighborhood. That night, as the moon hung high in the sky, Sarah found herself torn between the life she had built and the passion that had consumed her. When she arrived at their meeting place, Jason was already there, pacing nervously. He looked up at her, his eyes filled with a mix of desire and fear. They embraced, and in that moment, everything else faded away. The world around them ceased to exist as they lost themselves in each other. But as the night wore on, the thrill of their clandestine affair turned into a heated argument. Tensions flared as Sarah voiced her doubts and fears. She knew their relationship couldn't last forever, yet the thought of ending it felt like losing a part of herself. Jason, frustrated and desperate, tried to convince her otherwise, insisting that they could find a way to be together. The conversation escalated, and soon they were shouting at each other, the weight of their choices crashing down like a tidal wave. In a moment of rage, Jason pushed Sarah away, and she stumbled backward, falling to the ground. What happened next was a blur. Panic surged through Jason as he realized the gravity of his actions. In a heated moment, things took a turn for the worse. Sarah, feeling threatened, reached for her phone to call for help. Jason, in a blind panic, made a choice that would haunt him forever. In a desperate attempt to silence her, he acted without thinking, leading to an irreversible tragedy. The once quiet neighborhood, filled with laughter and trust, was thrust into chaos as the news of the incident spread. Emergency services arrived, but it was too late. The community was left in shock as details emerged, revealing the tangled web of lies and deceit that had unfolded in their midst. Mark, devastated by the loss of his wife, was left to pick up the pieces of a shattered life. The investigation revealed the affair, shattering the image of the perfect family and exposing the underbelly of suburban life. Jason was arrested, his future forever altered by a single moment of impulsive action. As the trial approached, the neighborhood grappled with the implications of the tragedy. Friends and family struggled to reconcile the woman they thought they knew with the reality of her actions. The community was torn apart, forced to confront the uncomfortable truth that even in the most picturesque settings, darkness can lurk just beneath the surface. As the trial unfolded, testimonies revealed the complexities of the relationships involved. Friends spoke of Sarah's struggles, her longing for connection, and the allure of a forbidden romance. Others shared their shock at the betrayal, struggling to understand how someone they once admired could be involved in such a devastating incident. The courtroom was filled with emotion as Mark sat through the proceedings, grappling with the betrayal and loss of the woman he loved. The pain etched on his face spoke volumes, a man caught in a whirlwind of grief and confusion. As the jury deliberated, the community held its breath, anxious for answers and resolution. Ultimately, the court found Jason guilty of manslaughter, a verdict that would never bring back the life lost, but offered a semblance of justice to a grieving family. As he was sentenced, a collective sigh echoed through the courtroom, a mix of relief and sorrow. The story of Sarah, the housewife who sought solace in the arms of another, serves as a haunting reminder of the fragility of trust and the consequences of our choices. The neighborhood, once a place of safety and laughter, would forever bear the scars of that tragic night. As time passed, the memories of Sarah and her choices lingered, a cautionary tale of passion gone awry. The houses remained, the lawns continued to be manicured, and the children played on, but the whispers of betrayal and loss hung in the air, a testament to the hidden darkness that can lie within the most ordinary of lives. As the years went by, the impact of that night continued to reverberate throughout the community. Neighbors who once shared barbecue parties and holiday celebrations found themselves avoiding each other, the shadow of betrayal tainting their interactions. Mark struggled to rebuild his life as a single father, wrestling with feelings of anger and heartbreak. He found solace in support groups, where he shared his story and listened to others who had experienced similar losses. Through these connections, he began to heal, slowly learning to navigate the complexities of raising his children alone. The kids, while unaware of the full extent of their mother's actions, sensed the change in their father. They could feel his sadness, the weight of their family's history pressing down on them. Meanwhile, Jason served his time, reflecting on the choices that led to that fateful night. In prison, he grappled with guilt and remorse, the memories of Sarah haunting him. He took part in counseling programs, determined to understand the darker impulses that had driven him to such a tragic end. Through therapy, he began to confront his past, unearthing the emotional turmoil that had fueled his reckless behavior. In time, he found a renewed sense of purpose, striving to become a better person when he was eventually released. After serving several years, Jason was finally granted parole. He left prison with the weight of his past on his shoulders, but also with a resolve to change his life. He moved away from the neighborhood, hoping to escape the ghosts of his former life. Mark, having slowly started to rebuild, received the news of Jason's release. He felt a mix of emotions: relief that justice had been served, but also a profound anger that the man responsible for his wife's death would now have a second chance. As the seasons changed, Mark's children grew, carrying with them the legacy of their mother's choices. They often asked questions about her, their curiosity tinged with a sense of loss. Mark chose to be honest, sharing stories of Sarah that highlighted her strengths while acknowledging the mistakes she had made. He wanted them to remember their mother as a whole person, not just as a victim of tragedy. As time passed, the community began to heal, the wounds slowly mending. But the scar of Sarah's affair and its tragic end would never completely fade. Residents began to reclaim their lives, focusing on what mattered most: family, friendship, and the bonds that held them together. The neighborhood eventually started to rebuild its sense of normalcy. Children played outside again, laughter echoed in the streets, and families hosted block parties, bringing back the spirit of community. Yet the unease of the past still lingered in the corners, like an unwelcome shadow that refused to be entirely banished. Residents often exchanged knowing glances, aware that beneath the surface of their cheerful gatherings lay the painful history of betrayal and loss. The house that once belonged to Sarah and Mark stood empty for a time, a silent testament to the tragedy that unfolded within its walls. It wasn't until a new family moved in, unaware of the dark history, that the house began to feel alive again. The new occupants, the Williams family, brought a sense of freshness to the neighborhood. With 3 children of their own, they quickly integrated into the community, hosting barbecues and inviting neighbors to join in their celebrations. While some residents were hesitant to engage too deeply, others embraced the opportunity to move forward, hoping that time would heal the wounds of the past. Mark, determined to focus on his children and build a better life for them, occasionally attended the Williams gatherings. He wanted his kids to experience the joys of childhood, to have friends and laughter, even in the shadow of their loss. As the summer wore on, his children made new friends, and Mark began to find solace in the warmth of their camaraderie. However, memories of Sarah remained ever present. On certain evenings, when the air was heavy with the scent of barbecued food and the sounds of laughter floated through the neighborhood, Mark would find himself lost in thought, reminiscing about the happier times before everything changed. He often reflected on the complexities of love, the fragile nature of trust, and the consequences of choices made in moments of vulnerability. He understood that while his family had endured unimaginable pain, they also had the opportunity to forge new paths. Meanwhile, Jason was adjusting to life outside of prison. He had relocated to a nearby town, determined to start anew. However, the echoes of his past haunted him. The faces of Sarah and Mark loomed in his memory, serving as constant reminders of the life he had shattered. He sought employment at a local construction company, working hard to prove he was more than just a man defined by his mistakes. He immersed himself in his job, hoping to find redemption through hard work and dedication. Yet, even as he made strides to rebuild his life, the guilt he carried felt like a heavy burden. He began attending support groups for those who had been involved in violent incidents, connecting with others who understood the complexities of remorse and regret. At one of these meetings, he met Emma, a kind-hearted woman with her own tragic history. They quickly formed a bond, sharing their stories and struggles, and in their conversations, Jason found a glimmer of hope. Emma's understanding of his pain offered him a sense of solace he had longed for. As their friendship grew, Jason began to open up about his past, his affair with Sarah, and the tragic night that forever altered the course of his life. Emma listened without judgment, offering support as he navigated the difficult path of forgiveness both for himself and for others. In the following months, Jason made a conscious effort to change his life for the better. He volunteered at local charities, helping at-risk youth in the area. Through this work, he hoped to impart lessons he had learned from his own mistakes, teaching them about the importance of making wise choices and the consequences of their actions. As he interacted with these young people, he saw glimpses of his former self, and in their eyes he recognized the potential for greatness if only they could avoid the pitfalls he had fallen into. Despite his efforts to change, he often grappled with the fear of being recognized. What if someone from the past saw him? Would they ever forgive him? Would they understand that he was no longer the same person? Back in the neighborhood, Mark was still in the process of healing. He had formed a bond with the Williams family and found support in the friendships he was building. His children, too, were flourishing, filled with youthful energy and laughter. As they played with their new friends, Mark felt a sense of peace, realizing that while the past would always be a part of their story, they could also create new memories filled with joy and hope. In a heartfelt conversation with a close friend, he expressed his desire to find closure, not just for himself but for his children as well. He wanted them to understand their mother, to know her as a whole person, beyond the tragedy that had unfolded. Mark made the difficult decision to visit Sarah's grave, hoping to find a semblance of closure. He took his children with him, preparing them for the emotions that might arise. As they stood together in front of the grave, the air was thick with unspoken words and memories. Mark spoke softly, sharing his thoughts and feelings, encouraging his children to ask questions. They placed flowers at the grave, a symbol of remembrance and love. The visit was bittersweet, a moment of connection that allowed them to honor Sarah's memory while acknowledging the pain her actions had caused. As they left the cemetery, Mark felt a sense of weight lifted, a step toward healing as they forged ahead. Months passed, and life began to settle into a new routine for both Mark and Jason. The neighborhood continued to flourish, the echoes of laughter and joy rising above the shadows of the past. One day, as Mark was taking a walk, he crossed paths with Jason, who had returned to the area to visit a friend. The air was tense, and Mark's heart raced as he recognized the man who had irrevocably altered his life. Jason's face reflected his own trepidation. They stood there, two men caught in a moment of unspoken understanding. Time seemed to freeze as they exchanged hesitant glances. Mark felt a surge of emotions: anger, sorrow, and even empathy. He knew the pain of loss all too well. After what felt like an eternity, Jason spoke, his voice trembling. "I'm so sorry for what happened. I never meant for any of this to occur." Mark looked at him, his emotions swirling. "You took her away from us," he replied, his voice heavy with grief. "I lost my wife, my partner, my children lost their mother." Jason nodded, tears welling in his eyes. "I know I can never make amends for what I've done, but I've spent every day since trying to understand the consequences of my actions. I'm trying to do better. I want to be a better man." In that moment, they shared an unexpected connection, a recognition of shared suffering, loss, and the struggle to move forward. Mark felt a flicker of compassion, realizing that while Jason had made unforgivable choices, he too was a product of his circumstances. Their conversation gradually shifted from anger to understanding as both men navigated the complexities of their intertwined fates. They spoke about their lives, their families, and their hopes for the future. Mark shared stories of his children, and Jason spoke of his journey toward redemption. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the neighborhood, they parted ways, each carrying a renewed sense of purpose. Mark returned home, feeling a sense of closure he had long sought. He realized that while the pain of losing Sarah would never fully disappear, he had the power to shape a brighter future for his family. Jason, too, felt a sense of liberation, hopeful that he could continue on his path of transformation and growth. In the months that followed, their lives continued to evolve. Mark poured his energy into his children, cultivating a loving environment where they could thrive. He became involved in community initiatives, determined to make a positive impact in the world around him. As he engaged with neighbors and friends, he found a renewed sense of belonging. Jason, meanwhile, embraced his new life, working diligently to build a future for himself. He remained committed to volunteering and sharing his story, using his experiences to inspire others to make better choices. The work was challenging, but he found fulfillment in helping young people steer clear of the path he had once taken. As time passed, the wounds of the past began to heal. Mark's children grew into young adults, carrying the lessons learned from their family's history. They understood the complexities of love and loss, learning to navigate their own relationships with empathy and understanding. Mark often reflected on the journey they had taken together, grateful for the resilience they had cultivated. Jason, too, found peace in his newfound purpose. He continued to forge connections within the community, working tirelessly to demonstrate that change was possible. In the quiet moments of reflection, both men recognized the power of forgiveness not just toward one another, but for themselves as well. They learned that healing often comes from facing the past head-on, acknowledging the pain, and choosing to move forward with hope. Their paths had crossed in the most tragic of ways, but in their shared understanding, they discovered the possibility of redemption. As the years rolled on, the neighborhood thrived, blossoming with the laughter of children and the bonds of friendship. The memories of Sarah lingered like whispers in the wind, a reminder of the complexities of life. But through it all, Mark and Jason found a way to coexist, each contributing to a brighter future. Their story serves as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring power of forgiveness. Though their lives were forever altered by tragedy, they chose to embrace the light, allowing their experiences to shape them into better versions of themselves. The scars may never fully fade, but the lessons learned would remain etched in their hearts, guiding them as they navigated the complexities of life. In the tapestry of existence, every thread, whether dark or light, contributes to the beauty of the whole. Their lives intertwined, not just in sorrow, but in hope, demonstrating that even in the aftermath of despair, new beginnings can emerge. As the sun set over the neighborhood, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, Mark found himself standing on his porch, watching his children play with their friends. The laughter echoed through the air, a sweet reminder of the joy that had returned to their lives. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey they had taken, a journey filled with pain but also resilience and growth. In the distance, he spotted Jason walking his dog, a familiar figure now transformed by time and experience. They exchanged nods, a silent acknowledgement of the understanding they had forged over the years. Mark's heart swelled with appreciation for the lessons learned through tragedy. He realized that while the past would always be a part of them, it didn't have to define their futures. He had worked hard to cultivate an environment filled with love, trust, and hope for his children, allowing them to blossom despite the shadows that lingered. Every moment spent together, every memory created, served as a testament to their strength as a family. Meanwhile, Jason had also found a place of peace within himself. He often volunteered at local youth centers, sharing his story to help guide others away from the mistakes he had made. The warmth he felt from helping those in need filled a void within him, reminding him that he could still contribute positively to the world. With each passing day, he learned to embrace forgiveness, understanding that it was not just about the people he had hurt, but also about allowing himself to move forward. In the years that followed, both men continued to navigate the complexities of their lives, learning to coexist within the fabric of their community. They attended local events, celebrated milestones together, and even shared occasional cups of coffee on Mark's porch. Their bond, forged in the crucible of tragedy, became a symbol of hope for others in the neighborhood, demonstrating that healing is possible and redemption can be found even in the darkest of times. Mark often reflected on the unpredictable nature of life, how a single moment could alter everything. He cherished the laughter of his children, the friendships he had built, and the community that had rallied around them. He found solace in the knowledge that love could triumph over loss and that every ending could lead to a new beginning. As the seasons changed and years rolled by, the neighborhood continued to thrive. The story of Sarah and the events that unfolded that fateful night became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of cherishing every moment. Yet it also served as a beacon of hope, illustrating the power of forgiveness, understanding, and the resilience of the human spirit. In time, Mark's children grew up, carrying with them the lessons learned from their father's experiences. They understood the complexities of love, trust, and the importance of making choices rooted in kindness and empathy. As they embarked on their journeys into adulthood, they often spoke of their mother, remembering her not just for the tragedy, but for the love she had given them in their early years. Mark made sure to keep her memory alive, sharing stories that highlighted the beauty of their family, the warmth of their home, and the joy she had brought into their lives. Jason, too, found his footing, establishing relationships built on trust and honesty. He forged new friendships, always mindful of the past but determined not to be defined by it. His journey of self-discovery and redemption became an ongoing quest, a testament to the possibility of change and growth. The neighborhood thrived, filled with laughter, joy, and the bonds of community. As Mark stood on his porch, watching the sunset once again, he felt a profound sense of peace. He had navigated through the storms of grief and emerged stronger, not just for himself but for his children. They were a family forged by love, resilience, and an unwavering commitment to honor the memory of the past while embracing the promise of the future.